name is Latonya. I am the Villij Mental Health and Trauma Specialist here. Tonight, I will be hosting tonight's talk. We have a very special guest, Keren Chen. For those of you who may be joining for the very first time, and you don't know what the Villij is, well, the Villij is a wellness organization for women of color to heal, expand, connect. So I hope that as we speak tonight, we can all feel connected on this topic of nutrition and immunity. In the chat tonight, we have Chanel, who is the co-founder of the Villij, and she will be interacting with you all. So please go ahead and, interact back with Chanel while she's there. So Villij Talk, for those of you who may not know, it is a talk co-hosted alongside with wellness practitioners. This is an exploration of wellness and self-care through really important conversation. So before we begin, let me just give you guys our house rules. They have not changed for those who have been here before. Typically, our talks are 1 hour long. We use the chat to send any questions that you may have. We also have polls for engagement. And near the end of our talk, we will leave about 5 to 10 minutes for a Q&A session. So let me go ahead and reintroduce our co-host for the night. We have special guest Keren Chen, who is a nutritionist based out of Toronto, and she will be guiding us through this conversation on immunity and nutrition. So let's get right into it. Keren, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what prompted you to become a nutritionist?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Latonya, for introducing me. And I'm really excited for you guys to listen to the questions she's going to ask because she put a lot of thought into them. And I think you guys are all just going to love the information that we'll discuss today. So a little bit about me. I've been working as a nutritionist here in Toronto for about 5 years now. Can you hear me great?
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. I've been working as a nutritionist for about 5 years now here in Toronto, but I've been part of the fitness and wellness industry for almost 10 years now. So it's been a long time coming. And right now within my practice, I mostly work with people who are mindful athletes. And I think that term can sometimes deter people or intimidate them. But really what a mindful athlete is someone who uses fitness and wellness as a form of personal development, just to become a better person overall. I have my degree from Ryerson University for dietetics. So originally I intended on becoming a dietitian. So I went into the science and research background, but decided that I wanted to incorporate more elements of holistic nutrition and functional medicine into my practice. And so over the course of the last 5 years, I've been able to really build a practice that feels 100% authentic to me. And locally in the community, I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of women of all different demographics and ages and socioeconomic backgrounds on just bridging the gap between physical and mental health when it comes to nutrition, because they're so intimately connected and they're not always acknowledged. And what got me into nutrition or just interested in the field is I had a really transformative experience with food, using food as medicine. I suffered from a really, really heavy bout of depression, and that manifested physically in the form of indigestion. So I had digestive health issues. My hair was falling out, my skin was breaking out, and I was tired and cold all the time. And using food and different modalities within it, I was able to heal myself of all of these things. And so I'm really glad we're talking about immunity today, because it has such a profound influence on all of the things that I just described, right? These like physical expressions of health, and then also psycho-emotional facets of health.
Absolutely. It's so interesting when we find out how everything is really interconnected,
Mm-hmm.
I had a chance to browse your website, which we will drop at the end of the talk, but it was really amazing work that you were doing. So thank you again for being here with us. So to begin, you briefly said the word immunity and immune system. So could you briefly, explain to us what exactly is the immune system as it relates to our health and wellness?
Sure. So in really plain terms, the immune system is a collective of organs and tissues that work together to protect us from foreign invaders. If you can look at it in that way. And it comprises of a lot of different elements, but we can't only talk about the immune system without starting in the gut, because that's where 70% of our immune cells kind of reside and are created. So it works really intimately with our GI tract, and the immune functions or immune, responses are expressed through various organs like the adrenal gland. The skin is a really big one. And so it's kind of our body's way of responding to foreign invaders or foreign elements that enter into our system.
Okay, perfect. So what factors come into play that can depress our immune systems? What role, could you describe the role that food has in boosting and depressing our immunity?
Yeah, so a lot of elements can impact our immune system. I think the primary one in our life, and in 2020 specifically, would be stress. And stress can be coming from various sources. It can come from a physical source, or it can come from a mental source. And your body is not always equipped or good at differentiating between the two. Sometimes it has the same immune response to a physical source and a psychological source, so it doesn't really differentiate between the two. I would say, yeah, so stress is definitely one of them. And then the foods that you choose can definitely impact your immune system as well. I think things that would depress the immune system would include anything that's inflammatory or highly processed or nutrient depleted. So I'd like to think about nutrition in two parts. So on one part, it's really important what you put into your body, but then on the other end, it's also important how your body is able to break down, absorb, and make use of the things that you put into your body. So with regards to that, I think if we look at food, yes, it matters. Like, you should eat foods that are anti-inflammatory, but if you're also eating things that are inflammatory and you're eliciting this internal physical response to it, then you're also increasing your immune load. Other common things that set off the immune system are things that we're intolerant of. So very common things are like gluten, dairy. Some people have peanut allergies. So try to avoid those if they elicit reactions. And things that tend to boost our immune system, there's definitely things that boost your gut health. So probiotics have a really intimate relation with our immune system. And then also things like drinking water, supporting your body's ability to detoxify through bowel movements, through urine, through sweating. That's important. And then anything that I would say is acidifying for your stomach. So things like lemon juice, lemon water, kombucha is a really good one. I'm a huge fan of it. And apple cider vinegar, just because your stomach is an acid tank, and that's kind of the first line of defense in your digestive tract against foreign invaders. If it's acidic enough, it's actually able to kill off a lot of the household bacteria that tend to enter into your body through food or water or whatever it is.
Awesome. Yeah, no, most recently, I've actually been taking these immune boosters, which the primary ingredient is the apple cider vinegar. So I found it to be really interesting. You also mentioned inflammation. I know for myself, I am at the point where I'm able to recognize when I'm experiencing inflammation. But you go ahead and just explain to us, what is inflammation and what are some signs that we can look out for?
Absolutely. I think inflammation has kind of become a bad word in the current climate. People think inflammation is bad, all of it is bad. But the reality is your body needs a balance of inflammation and anti-inflammation. So it's kind of like healing. Think about if you cut your hand and you put a Band-Aid on it, that Band-Aid isn't the problem. That Band-Aid's actually doing you a favor by protecting that wound and giving it nutrients to heal. The problem is when there's an abundance of inflammation. So when you keep packing on Band-Aids on the same finger, then you lose dexterity and flexibility in that finger, then it's no longer functional. And so the same thing within our body, if you just load on inflammation and you don't supply it with the raw materials or the pathways to clear out that inflammation, AKA anti-inflammatory pathways, then that's where problems exist. So inflammation in itself is basically your body body or your immune system's way of healing a certain part of your body. So with a cut, for example, you'll see like really clear liquids starting to ooze from the cut. I'm sorry to get graphic here for anyone. That's just your body sending inflammation to the site of the cut to supply it with fluids and nutrients and to isolate that site of I guess, trauma or impact to prevent it from spreading too. So it's a good thing. It allows your body to heal. It's when there's an overload of it, then it sends your body into an imbalance.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to go ahead and ask our viewers tonight, those who are tuning in, a chat question. Which signs of inflammation have you experienced? I know for myself, typically, and this is probably a little weird, but typically my neck becomes really, really warm. Like it starts to become really hot and I recognize like, okay, this is an area that for me is inflamed. So now I'm going to go grab all of my anti-inflammatory substances to try to combat that. But if anybody else has experienced inflammation, can you tell us what type of signs you've had? I see KM here says pain. That's a good sign, I would believe. Stomach.
Very common.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, stomach pain. Yeah, pain typically in the joints is super common because that's where a lot of impact happens and inflammation tends to accumulate. And also around the joints, there's not a lot of circulation. So clearing out inflammation is more difficult compared to other parts of the body. Yeah, stomach pain, that can definitely happen. With respect to your digestive system, if there is inflammation there, it can become more serious conditions, things like autoimmune diseases, or gastritis or Crohn's, things like that. So yeah, definitely keeping an eye on that inflammation.
So Keren, when dealing with inflammation, how can nutrition help us or hurt us?
So as I mentioned before, there's inflammatory pathways and anti-inflammatory pathways, and you can feed both based on what you eat. A really good example of that is the kind of fat that you take in. So there are not two main kinds of fats, but there are two kinds of fats that feed either. The omega-6 fatty acids tend to feed the inflammatory pathway, especially if they're oxidized or highly processed. So this is coming from things like canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, and whatnot. And then there's also omega-3 fatty acids that are the basis for these hormone messengers called prostaglandins that feed the anti-inflammatory pathway in the body. So this is coming from like wild-caught fish, or fish oils are a really common supplement for omega-3s. Flax seeds, hemp hearts can be a really good source of that. So just being mindful of the fatty acids that you're taking in can even shift your body's immune response.
Okay, awesome. And Keren, can you tell us some other signs of inflammation? So of course, pain is one. I think when you have like heat in different areas of your body, that could be a sign of inflammation. But what are some other signs that we may not be aware of?
Yeah, it kind of depends on the body, but I know swelling can definitely be a sign. Some people have edema. So that's just like a lot of water retention in a certain part of their body, commonly in the ankles or their feet. Another common one would be something like eczema that could show that there's maybe inflammation in the gut, or there's inflammation in one of the detoxifying organs or glands. So it really depends on the area of the body. But for the most part, pain and swelling are pretty common.
Okay, I see Chanel says she experienced that as well.
I think we all have at some point.
Or another. So you mentioned a lot about, the fish oils and so on, but which foods should we minimize or eliminate altogether to reduce inflammation? I know for myself, I can't do dairy at all, but yeah.
I think one that most people share, because with dairy or allergens, everybody's so different and our symptoms are kind of range from mild to severe. But I think one everybody can avoid is processed oils or hydrogenated oils. So vegetable oils, margarine, shortening, things like that are incredibly oxidized and very, very inflammatory for the body. And also for most people, I would say refined sugar in high quantities. Here and there, a little bit of dessert or a little bit of chocolate here and there isn't going to kill you. It's actually it can be part of a healthy lifestyle is what I'm trying to get at. But if you're overdoing it and you're consuming it at every single meal, in every dressing or, bread or whatever you're eating, then that can absolutely have an inflammatory effect on the body.
Okay, so you mentioned the vegetable oil. What should a better alternative be? Would that be the olive oil or avocado oils?
It kind of depends on the cooking temperature. So that's where we can get really specific on food choice. If you're cooking with high heat, like for baking, for like stewing, sauteing, things that are going to spend a long time on the heat and at high temperatures, then I actually recommend something like a solid fat, like a coconut oil that's extra virgin and raw. Another really good one would be like grass-fed butter or clarified ghee. That's a really good one because those tend to be more heat stable. So they don't change their chemical structure at high temperatures and they don't oxidize easily. But if you're using it more for raw applications or for light sauteing, that's where like an extra virgin olive oil is awesome, or avocado oil is another one of my favorite. It's really flavor neutral. And if you're looking for like just purely raw consumption, just for salad dressings or just as like a finishing garnish on top of a dish, then you can consider the more delicate oils like flax or avocado, or not avocado oil, almond oil, or any of the like raw pressed nut or seed oils.
Okay, I love that. How do you feel about corn oil, just out of curiosity?
It's not great. So if you think about corn, right, traditionally we use it to make very starchy, very carbohydrate rich things like taco shells. Those are carby. So when you think about extracting fat from corn, it takes a very extensive process for it to get that fat out versus something like a coconut or an olive, where all you have to do is press it with pressure. There's no heat involved. There's no chemical extractions. So you can kind of see the difference, right? The more steps you put your food through, the more it loses nutrients along the way and the more it transforms from that original form. So we definitely want to keep things as natural and unprocessed as possible. So corn oil, try to avoid it where you can.
Okay, I love it. I love it. I love it. So now I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll question for all of our people in the chat. So let me go ahead and launch that now. The question tonight is, do you eat a balanced diet? Okay. I definitely see a little mixed here. Some people are sometimes, others are to no. I'm going to wait a few more seconds for some last responses. Okay, so here we have it. So 18% of you say yes, you do. That is awesome. 64%, that's where I would fall as well sometimes. And then 18% with a no. Okay, I don't think, that's very surprising. I think that's awesome actually for the percentages. All right, great. So question for you, can you define for us what exactly is a balanced diet?
Yeah, I think the official dietitian term would be a diet that contains all of the vitamins, minerals, and protein, fats, and carbs that you need in a day in order for you to thrive as a human being. But I think for me personally, coming from a more holistic background and more one that just respects like bio-individuality, I think the general idea is to get a good variety of carbs, fats, and protein. And to do that, you have to eat at least 5 different vegetables per day and try to get protein with every meal and try to get a good healthy serving of fat with every meal. And these fats have to come from the unprocessed sources that I talked about. So it's a little bit more specific than the generic answer that you would read in a book. And I think these guidelines, even though they sound maybe they sound like a lot of work, but truly they're very simple. If you just count like how many vegetables are you eating a day, and are they different from each other? Are you eating broccoli for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? If so, you're only getting one profile of vitamins and minerals, because broccoli is going to have a different set of nutrients than a butternut squash, than cauliflower or carrots. So if you're able to change this up, then you don't need a multivitamin technically, because you're getting the respective nutrients from all of these different foods. So variety is important. And then I think also getting the different food groups that I mentioned is important.
Okay, I love that. So definitely variety is important, but how much of it do we eat? If I were to eat some broccoli, on my plate, how much broccoli should I be eating? And same for carbs and the meat portion, the protein.
Yeah, that requires more individual attention. And anyone out there who tells you like, this is the right answer for you without getting to know you first is doing you a disservice, is not being responsible with the practice, because everyone is so drastically different. I work specifically with mostly athletes or people who work out, even within the same sport, even though these people look very similar, like they have the same body type on the outside, but what they eat can actually really vary. Like, for example, I just worked with someone who is an ultra marathon runner, and he literally with his team ran for 31 hours, which I cannot fathom why someone would want to do that. But yeah, 31 hours of straight up running on minimal sleep. And yeah, it's crazy. And even within their team, they have people that they're all very like tall and have long legs and quite lanky, as you need to be for an ultra marathon runner, but their diet looks so different. Some people eat way more carbs than others, and then some people consider themselves fat metabolizers, so they eat a lot more fats and way less carbohydrates. And so it's very hard to say. I would say for the most part, focus on getting in variety first, and then you can work with someone or do more research on your own and trial and error it to figure out what the portions should be.
Awesome. So I saw the question in the chat. What are some smart, easy ways to sneak in veggies into your meals? That is my question too. What's your take on like juicing and smoothies as an alternative for ingesting the suggested quantity of fruits and vegetables that we should be having each and every day?
Right. I am of the school of thought that juices and smoothies cannot replace whole food vegetables. I know, I'm so sorry to break anyone's heart. Please don't leave this chat. Please don't leave this call. And here's the reason why. I think it's absolutely true that juices and smoothies are a quick way to shuttle nutrients into your bloodstream, because they're very easily digestible. They've already been mechanically broken down into a liquid, so they go down easy. I get that. But also, if you're only drinking juices, you're bypassing a lot of the fiber and a lot of the electrolytes and starch content that might be very valuable for your health. And part of the reason why we need fiber is it feeds the gut flora that resides in your intestines. So it helps to make the good guys thrive and keep the bad guys at population control. So yeah, definitely don't skip your vegetables. You can have a serving of juice every day, but just don't make that in replacement of your whole foods.
That broke my heart.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was a deep exhale right there. Latonya, I heard that.
I really, really am.
No, you can keep juicing. Just make sure you're also eating your vegetables and salads too. And I think some good ways for you to sneak veggies into your meals is to just chop them really fine. I think if you don't like the taste of them, when you make meatballs or like a pasta sauce with like ground beef and tomato sauce and whatnot, then just chop your veggies really fine, like mushrooms, pulverize them, food process them into really small pieces. And that way you don't get big chunks of them and you don't really taste them as much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So as a nutritionist, I browsed your webpage. You promote nutrition as a lifestyle. So could you share the meaning behind that?
Yeah, I think nutrition, or I guess diet, isn't just about what you eat. I think I really believe that diet is also anything that you take in. It could be, what you read, what you see on the internet, what people say to you, what you say to people. These are all part of your diet. And I think when I think of nutrition as a lifestyle, I also just think that the way that we fuel our body or the way that we eat and choose food is a direct reflection of what we think of ourselves, like what we think we deserve, how much time we think we deserve, what our worth is. So there's like this really deeply ingrained sense of self that's part of food choice that's not always acknowledged.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to squeeze this question in because I'm curious about this too.
Yeah.
Amira asks, what about fasting or water fast to detox?
Yeah. So these are very ancient practices that have been around for many, many years. And there's a lot of books documenting their efficacy. But the thing is, there hasn't been a lot of research that has come out to support the claims. But that doesn't mean that it's false. It just means that you have to navigate carefully. With regards to fasting, for women, it's a lot different than men because men have more testosterone. That gives them the ability to tap into their stored energy, like body fat and glycogen, much more easily than women. So it carries them through a fast more easily, and it allows them to return to their normal homeostatic state more easily. Whereas for women, part of our reproductive system is we are made to bear children. And so as a result, the estrogen and progesterone levels in our body kind of enable us to be more prone to store body fat. So when you put your body through repeated fasts back to back, and if you're coming from a state of deficit where you're malnourished already, or you're not well fed, then that can lead to you, worsening the things that you're trying to fix. That could lead to more inflammation. That could lead to more physical stress in your body. And I think part of how you can see fasting is it's a controlled injection of stress into your day. It's kind of disrupting your daily routine, and some people respond really well to that. But there are also people who have adrenal fatigue or have chronic lethargy that should not be fasting. So you would have to do your research based on whether or not if it's right for you. It would depend on your health status starting.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on a little bit before self-esteem and the connection it can have with your diet. So could you just speak a little bit on emotional eating, and could you share some tips on how we can transform our minds in the way that we relate to food?
Yeah, so emotional eating you can see as a coping mechanism, right? It's in response to boredom or stress or some sort of trigger in our lives. And if you break down what a reaction is, or what a coping mechanism is there are three parts. So first, there's the trigger. There's a thing that makes you feel. And then next, there's like a response period, or like a assessment time. And then there's the reaction, or the action that follows. So typically after a really stressful day of work, or something really traumatic happens, the loss of a family member, or something that's just painful, it's very normal for a lot of people to turn to food for that comfort and that security. I myself have definitely done it in the past because it's kind of what we grow up with, right? I come from an immigrant household. Food was like our love language. So, if I have a bad day, then it's very natural for me to turn to food for that comfort. But what you can do is you can reprogram that reaction over time. And it will take time because it's taken you years to establish this coping mechanism. But you can start by prolonging the assessment time in reaction to that trigger. So for example, if you have a really bad day and you have this urge to go eat ice cream, then instead of going to the fridge and grabbing your ice cream right away in response, set a timer. See if you can wait 3 minutes and focus on deep breathing or do something else, and come back and say, do I still want that ice cream? Do I still feel anxiety in the moment? Right. Sometimes maybe the answer is yes. Sometimes you'll say, I need some moose tracks right now. And then there are other days where you'll say, actually, I'm good. I think I dealt with that thought and I don't need it anymore. And so over time, the amount of times that you say no become more frequent than the times that you say, yes, I still need that. And you're able to disband that habit as a result. So be patient with yourself if that's you and that's something that you're trying to do. I've also seen people give themselves like the push-up challenge. So they're like, if I need to go into my fridge and snack, I have to do 20 push-ups before I get that food. And so halfway through their push-ups, they'll be like, it's not worth it. I hate doing push-ups. Just something to break up that routine so that it's disrupted and you kind of second guess yourself on whether or not you really need it.
No, that is great. That is a great tip. I needed this talk last week because I spent this entire week eating Halloween chocolate. I don't even like chocolate. So I don't even know what was going on with me this week. And I was like, because, I'm in mental health. And I was thinking to myself, this is a trigger for something. Like, what are you being triggered by? Mm-hmm. What is going on? And I could not stop myself. But definitely, if I had to do 20 push-ups, it wouldn't have happened. So great tip.
No problem.
Do you have any advice on meal prepping for those of us who've always wanted to do it, yet we feel intimidated by the idea?
Yeah, I think it really helps when you're able to write things down in advance. This personally, like I have a little meal plan that I made for myself for the week that's stuck in my fridge right now. And the reason for that is we make hundreds of decisions in a day. And so by the time it gets to meal times, we have run out of decision-making power. We experience something called decision fatigue. So if you were to ask yourself to cook in the moment and assemble this balanced meal, and by the way, I saw that some people are eating Sour Patch Kids and I think chips and guac up there. So by the end of the day, those are the things that are easy and convenient. So of course you're going to want to reach for those. But if you're able to make a plan and write things down in advance and write down like, for Monday for lunch, I'm going to have this. Tuesday for lunch, I'm going to have this. Then your decision's already made for you. And you made it at a time where you had clear thinking and you had mental clarity. So I think delegating that in advance is really helpful. And then the other thing that I love, and I made an ebook that surrounds this, is this idea of making one protein and transforming it into different meals. That has really helped me. So my ebook is called One Protein, 5 Meals. Very creative name. Thank you guys for the applause. And so it would start with something like a piece of chicken breast. If I make a big batch of chicken breast for the week, I can turn this into different meals. I can make it into a Tex-Mex salad. I can add it to a scramble, or I can turn it into a hash, or I can add some barbecue sauce and shred it up and then make it into a chicken barbecue sandwich, So there are different ways to transform leftovers or this base protein. So I think getting creative on ways to do that, or you can check out my ebook, shameless self-plug in there.
We love it. That's fine. I see in the comments, Bissy said, don't shop while hungry. Mm-hmm. I totally agree. That is a great tip. Or Full by Ray. Yeah, also totally agree. What are some foods that we can add into our daily diets to help boost immunity?
Well, right off the bat, I think about kombucha because that kind of supports your immune system in 2 different ways. So the first way I mentioned is it has organic acids in there. It has like that vinegary component in there to acidify your stomach. So it creates a really acidic environment where these common household bacteria can't survive. So you're less likely to get food poisoning or foodborne illnesses for that reason, or infections. And then the second thing is it has probiotics in there. So it's a fermented tea beverage. It's fermented, meaning it has live bacteria culture that helps to populate the gut flora that's in your digestive system. And we talked about, 70% of your immune cells reside in your gut. And your gut also has this nervous system in there called the enteric nervous system that communicates with your brain all day, that communicates with the other organs. So when your gut flora is in a healthy state, studies have shown that it has a positive effect on your immune system. It defends you against common viruses and colds.
Okay, so any others? I would think ginger. I could be wrong, but what do you?
Yeah, so ginger, turmeric, these have anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties. So So antioxidant just means it prevents the oxidation within your cells. So it protects your cells against aging, against degradation. Yeah, absolutely. Ginger can support with the immune system. What else can? I think eating your leafy greens, honestly, because they have the phytonutrients, they have the antioxidants, and then also vitamins and minerals that are important for combating against foreign invaders.
Okay, awesome. And you mentioned the antioxidants. So that would be
Mhm.
like berries, right?
Yeah, berries could be a source of them for sure. I just hesitate to say berries or fruits just because we're going into winter season, and I understand that those tend to be really expensive. But if you're able to get your hands on some flash frozen berries, like from the grocery store, absolutely throw those into your smoothies.
Awesome. Do you have any go-to herb choices that would be great to add into our meals?
Herbs, eh? I think this is where variety really comes in. So people will always try to sell you like, buy this superfood or get this supplement. And the reality is one food doesn't make or break your health. Just like one workout isn't going to make you fit or unfit. I would say try to get variety. Things like parsley, cilantro, scallions, all of those are really awesome. They all have their own individual anti-inflammatory agents within them. So getting a variety really, I think, is ultimately the best.
Okay, awesome. And how often would you suggest that we have them if we were to implement herbs into our diets?
I think on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they taste great. They can be a little garnish in your meals, or you can make them into dressings, sauces, just easy ways to inject nutrition into your meals. I think people always associate herbs with like juice or tea, but they can be part of whole food. They can be part of meals as well. I definitely advocate for starting with your food and then adding those frills and supplements as like a bonus because yeah, they work, but not standalone. They don't have the same impact as whole foods.
Okay, so we have a question for the chat, but I see that there's something here that Melissa asked. Is it better to drink kombucha alone, or is it okay to drink with your meal?
Great question. I actually prefer to drink kombucha ahead of my meal. So right before or with is okay too. And the reason for that is it contains so many probiotics and live enzymes in there and organic acids that promote digestion. So when you're eating food, it kind of helps you digest and break down food. And going back to what I said in the beginning, nutrition is twofold, right? It's about what you put in and how your body receives it. If you can give your body a little bit of help in receiving it, then bang for your buck. You're making the most of your kombucha.
Awesome, thank you.
Great question.
So now I have a question for our people in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys feel about supplements, and has anyone tried to implement any supplements into their diets? Please let us know. We want to hear from you. Currently for myself, I was trying to take, I think it's called Bilboa. I think that's what it's called, one of those supplements. And I was also taking like a vitamin D and a vitamin C. Here I see kombucha. Kombucha is unpasteurized. Is it safe for everyone? Is it safe for everyone?
Yeah, so most kombuchas actually in Canada are pasteurized. Like they don't really stock things in stores that aren't. I think there's different levels to pasteurization. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. For the most part, yes, I think it is. Anything that has a pH that's under, I believe, 4.3 or 4.5, according to the FDA, is safe without preservatives. So it absolutely is.
Awesome. And to answer our question, I see a few people take fiber supplements. Some others take liquid iron every morning. Okay, awesome. Well, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of liquid iron?
Liquid iron, yeah, it's definitely more effective than tablet or capsule form. It kind of depends on the company. So Bissy, if you want to share the company, I mean, I don't want to blackball anyone, but yeah, it kind of depends on the company and the potency, but for the most part, liquid iron is good. It's much better than the other.
Perfect. So it seems like a good number of us are
Mm.
into vitamins, multivitamins, DUC supplements, omega-3, collagen, etc. So when should a person decide to include supplements into their lifestyle?
Funny you ask that. I think most people, when they get into health and wellness, they start with supplementation. But if you think about nutrition kind of like a pyramid, supplementation's at the very tip top of that pyramid. So it's the step that makes the least impact on your overall health and wellness. Whereas the things at the bottom of the pyramid are things like food quality. So where are you sourcing your food from? Where are you getting your nutrients from? Macronutrient ratio. So getting a good balance of carbs, fats, protein, and drinking lots of water. Water is a macronutrient. And then also lifestyle factors like sleep, digestion, energy regulation, blood sugar regulation, stress management. Those are important. Nutrient timing would be like the next step up. And then last but not least, that would be supplementation. So each of the steps I just mentioned, as we progress to the top of the pyramid, it makes less and less impact. And it requires you to have a strong base in the bottom tiers in order for that top tier to be effective. So if you want to add in supplementation, 100% by all means. And I think there are people who are exceptions to that rule, in that if you have a deficiency, if you're iron deficient, you're going to need supplementation. But I'm talking about the general public. For the most part, most people need to start by paying attention to where they're getting their nutrients from in the whole foods. So like, are you eating white bread or whole grain bread? Or are you eating enough vegetables in a day? Are you getting enough lean protein? And where are you sourcing it from? Those questions tend to be more pertinent.
Okay. And what steps or practices can we implement to begin building a new dietary lifestyle focused on boosting our immune system?
So I think step number one is try to cook more, or try to read the ingredient labels in which you're shopping. So knowing what you're putting into your body, that gives you back control right away. I think that's always step number one. And then step number two, paying attention to, like I said, like how many veggies are you eating, counting those things, and are you getting variety in your diet? And when you're buying things like meat and fish, are you trying your best to source them well? Like, are they coming from grass-fed sources? Are they coming from wild-caught sources? I think those are two good steps to start with.
Okay, awesome. I see Chanel here wrote, what
Mm-hmm.
would you suggest for someone who constantly suffers from low energy?
So that's kind of a loaded question, because low energy is a really common symptom for a lot of different things. So it could be that you're not drinking enough water. It could be that you're B vitamin deficient. There are so many different possible causes. So it would really depend on what you're eating. My recommendation is try to keep a food journal. That could be a really helpful tool to you. If one day, I guess if 3 to 4 days a week you're feeling low energy, look at what you're eating on those days, or look at when you're eating. If there's a big gap between lunch and dinner, I can see why you're a little low energy. Or if you usually drink 4 cups of caffeine or coffee in a day, and one day you only had one and you felt really low energy, you're probably a little reliant on caffeine. So definitely keeping a food journal could be a good little tool.
At what point, should a person seek assistance, either from a nutritionist or a medical professional or, a naturopath? At what point would you suggest that someone would go see one of these different individuals?
Yeah. In my experience, and this is honestly what because when I first started nutrition, I started from zero, didn't know anything about health and wellness. This was over 10 years ago. And I was confused. There's a lot of conflicting information out there. And I found myself trying a bunch of different things that didn't work before I finally got an education in nutrition, and then started to trial and error and really understand what worked for me. So I think as soon as possible, if you want to save time. And if not, just do a lot of research on it. Find someone you trust, find someone you feel like they have good intentions and they put out sound, scientifically backed information, and then follow them. The worst thing you can do, which is what I did back in the day, was I subscribed to like 20 different blogs, 20 different podcasts. They didn't even have podcasts back then. It was more like our RSS feeds. I'm dating myself here. Yeah, like just subscribing to all these different schools of thought, because all I would end up feeling is more confused. Like, who should I believe? Whereas if I just did a little more research on the person that I was following, then I would be able to see that, oh, this person's legit, whereas this person probably isn't quite aligned with what I believe nutrition to be. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, before we get into our question and answer portion, could you leave us with any last tips to improve our immune system during the fall and winter seasons?
Absolutely. I think number one, aside from washing your hands and wearing a mask this season, which is super, super important, I think drinking water, like hydration, is something that's really overlooked. Unfortunately, as we get into the drier seasons, you probably need a little more water than usual, just because water is one way for your body to deliver nutrients to your cells, right? Via the blood, via lymph liquid or lymph fluids, but also it supports with forming bowel movements. It supports with detoxification through your urine, through your sweat. So these are really important. I think staying hydrated. Another one would be getting enough protein, which for a lot of women is actually very hard, or they're not used to hearing that, because protein tends to be a very masculine food for a lot of people, like building muscle kind of thing. So sometimes my clients can be really afraid of it. But yeah, getting enough protein, because protein, amino acids, which is what proteins are made up of, are the building blocks of a lot of cells and immune system defense mechanisms. And they do a lot of work in the biochemical pathways in your body to support the immune system. So that's definitely another one. And then I think adding like ginger, herbs, spices into your day-to-day life, into day-to-day cooking, never hurts. It's a great addition.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Keren. At this time, we are going to open the floor up for questions that our audience may have. I see the first one here, so please, you guys, feel free to ask all the questions you have as we have Keren here with us tonight. Our first question here, is it necessary to count calories to achieve fitness goals?
Great question. It depends on your goals. So I would say if you're just someone who wants to be healthy and able-bodied for the rest of your life, then no, absolutely not. You don't have to. You can monitor portions with, other methods that don't require you to measure and weigh every single thing that you put into your body. But if you're someone who wants to be an elite athlete, like I'm working with someone who is a player in the NHL right now, then yeah, for him, we are counting calories, or we're counting macros, specifically his macronutrient breakdown, because that's his job, his profession. So it kind of depends on what your fitness goals are. I'll leave it at that. If you have a follow-up question, you're more than welcome to ask it.
Awesome. And I actually have a question, because I am a vegetarian currently. So I don't eat meat for protein, but do you have any thoughts on best alternatives, I guess?
Yeah, I would say my favorite plant-based protein would be tempeh. It's a fermented tofu, essentially. And the reason I like it the best, because soybeans are a complete protein. So they have the full amino acid profile, which is important because not all plant-based proteins are. Like, for example, with grains, legumes, even quinoa, it's not a complete protein. So soybeans are a great alternative to that. However, a lot of soy products tend to be really processed, and they tend to be hard for the digestion. So when you ferment it into something like tempeh, you're making these nutrients more bioavailable, more easy to access via your gut. So I would say that's probably my favorite. And then the other thing is, whenever you're eating grains or legumes for protein, try to make sure they're soaked and sprouted, so that, again, you're really maximizing the nutrient potential of that food.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have here, are you familiar with the brand Floravit? And is it deep for liquid iron?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that brand. I'm so sorry.
do you have any other suggestions of liquid iron brands?
Yeah, there's one by a Canadian company. I'm not affiliated with them, but I personally like their products because it's a very professional line. Um, they're called Biotics Canada, Biotics Research, I believe, and it's one that a lot of naturopaths and nutritionists turn to. And then the other one is AOR.
AOR. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Are there any other questions for Keren Chen before we go ahead and wrap up our evening?
These are so great.
I know.
You guys are so smart.
I cannot wait to give them your information because I think you have so much to offer all of us, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we've got another one from
Hey,
Bissy.
yeah, do you know of any local butchers for hormone-free meat?
Yes. I get most of my meats delivered because I live in downtown Toronto and I don't have a car. So I don't feel like lugging like a backpack full of meat on on a TTC or my bike. And these delivery services are actually very competitive in pricing in that I find them to be much more affordable than butchers. Although if you want an in-person butcher shop, Sanigan's in the Kensington Market is phenomenal. Love them. But the two companies that I use for delivery, one is called True Local. I love that they have a crazy, amazing selection of different meats. So they do like fish, they do chicken, they do turkey, lamb, bison, beef, pork, the whole shebang. Yeah, I love them. And then the other company I really love is called oh my God. Oh, West Side Beef. It almost escaped me just now. West Side Beef, and it operates from a local restaurant called the Richmond Station. And they basically buy whole cows or whole pigs or whole chickens, and they break it down for you, and they render the stock, and they like render the beef tallow, the pork lard. So all of these parts of the animal are being used and not going to waste. So yeah, I really love that. So those are two. Yeah, I think those are the first ones that come to mind.
Awesome. And then you mentioned tofu in a variation before, but is regular tofu okay for vegetarian protein options?
It's okay. I prefer tempeh. The reason I don't love tofu is it has these things called phytoestrogens that can really disrupt our natural estrogen levels. So it can impact your period, your menstrual cycle, and other things that are related to that. So I would just be careful and monitor your hormone levels. But yeah, aside from that, also variety is important. So don't only get your protein source from one thing.
Awesome. So Sean has a question here. What are your thoughts on collagen supplements for skin, nail, hair health?
I am a huge fan of collagen, and actually it has bases in supporting the immune system as well, because it helps to heal the gut lining in your small intestines. So what collagen is it's essentially a protein that's found in a lot of connective tissues and tissues in your body. And yeah, I love it. I take Vital Proteins almost every day, and I found that it's the only reason I was able to grow my hair like past my collarbone, because when I was growing up, like I always had short hair because I couldn't grow my hair very long, and it does have proven benefits for like skin, nail, hair, and gut.
Okay. Bissy asked, which brands are good for collagen?
Again, not affiliated, but the brands that I really like, one is called Vital Proteins, which Sean mentioned, and then the other one is called Spruce, Sproos, which is a Canadian brand. I find that they're both very clean and they're very flavor free, especially the unflavored ones, and that for me is important. Chanel's buying collagen tomorrow. Yay!
Is it better to take it as a liquid or as a pill?
Collagen, you mean? Or
I think is that what you meant, Renee? I
okay.
think so.
If it's collagen,
Yeah.
it's better to actually take it as a powder, not formulated into a liquid or a pill. I guess the liquid would just be a powder and water, or coffee or smoothie or whatever. So yeah, in a powder is ideal.
Awesome. Okay, do we have any last questions for the evening? If not, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So Sean cosigns vital proteins is a great practice
Yeah.
for collagen. Okay, I may
Sean
go
knows what's up.
some. All right, so where can we find you on Instagram?
Yeah. So on Instagram, you can find me at kombucha.mami. I try to put some free content out regarding nutrition. I put a lot of recipes on there almost every other day, so it's pretty frequent. In addition to that, I host my own podcast. It's called Booch Please Podcast. Sounds very sassy, but that kind of touches more on the psycho-emotional elements of nutrition and how it pertains to personal development and growth. So I get to interview a lot of my really good friends in the city who are just icons and beautiful, wonderful people who are very smart. And then if you want to work with me one-on-one, you can visit my website. It's kerenchen.ca. Thank you, Chanel, for throwing that up there. And I'm also working on a nutrition challenge right now. That's a 4-week challenge, and it's designed for beginners in nutrition. So it really touches on the fundamental elements that I kind of listed out in that pyramid structure. And so if you want to sign up for the waitlist for that, when that comes out, you can hit it up via the link in my bio. Oh, thank you. Yes, that's my ebook. Thanks, Chanel.
1 protein, 5 meals. Yes, your shameless plug. I love it. I love it. You guys should definitely check it out. Check out her website. All great information. So thank you again, Keren, for joining us tonight for this wonderful conversation on how we can boost our immunity during this time by using nutrition.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. And for those of you who joined us tonight, thank you also for joining us. It has been a wonderful conversation. We have upcoming Villij Talks. Our next talk is on November 12th at 7 p.m. and we will be discussing naturopathy and skincare with Dr. Olivia Rose. And then we also have all of our past episodes on YouTube. You can find us there. We'll put the link below in the chat. And if you found tonight valuable, we encourage you to donate to support the Villij Fund, help us keep these experiences accessible to the community. And to support, we will go ahead and put that link in the chat as well. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Keren, and everyone have a wonderful night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for your engaged questions. And thank you, Latonya, for being amazing at facilitating.
Oh, thank you.